They say neighbors can either be your closest allies or your worst enemies. And when that neighbor also happens to be the president of the HOA, the same person who believes her word is law, you learn pretty quickly which side she's on. I'd been away for work, out of state, and I wasn't supposed to be back until the weekend. But things wrapped up early, and I came home 3 days ahead of schedule. I pulled into my quiet Denver suburb expecting nothing more than a hot shower, a home-cooked meal, and maybe some peace after weeks of stress. Instead, what I found was the beginning of the most twisted ordeal of my life. The storm had just cleared. The sky was sharp blue, the kind of blue that makes everything look more honest, like nothing can hide. But honesty wasn't what I saw. I slowed my car when I spotted my driveway, because something was off. My RV, the Titan, was parked crooked. Not just a little off, but almost diagonal, like someone had wrestled it into position. Its nose angled toward the lawn. Its side door wasn't closed properly. It hung open with a small gap, like a mouth ready to scream. Immediately, my gut tightened. That cold slice of wrongness stabbed deep. I pulled into the curb, killed the engine, and just sat there for a moment, staring. Something wasn't right. I grabbed my keys and walked up the path. That's when I saw her, Karen Dinkle, the infamous HOA president of our community. If you've ever met a person who thinks being loud makes them right, you know exactly who she was. Karen had a presence that filled every space, whether you wanted it or not. She wasn't the kind of person to talk with you. She was the kind of person who talked at you. And she was inside my RV. She wasn't just poking around. She was packing it. Stuffing cloth bags into cabinets like she was preparing for a weekend getaway. Her husband, Bob, was nearby, moving slowly, shoulders rounded in defeat like he had long ago given up the fight. And then there was Tim, their son, standing at the curb, looking 19 going on 90, guilt etched into his face, eyes darting to the ground like he wanted to disappear. For a moment, I thought maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe I was so tired I was seeing things. But then Karen looked up, and instead of freezing like someone caught red-handed, she did the unthinkable. She pointed at me. "It's rented," she barked. Her voice was so sharp it cut through the air. "I have the paperwork. He's lying. He's here to steal it." And before I could even take a step closer, she whipped out her phone and dialed 911. The way her fingers danced across the screen, it wasn't hesitation, it was practice. This wasn't the first time she'd used emergency services as her personal weapon. I stood there, calm but boiling inside, as she gave her version of reality to the dispatcher. "Yes, officer, he's here now, trying to steal the RV. Yes, it's rented, I have the documents." She shot me a glare like she was daring me to speak. Within minutes, the wail of sirens echoed down the block. 2 patrol cars rolled up, lights flashing red and blue against the damp pavement. Neighbors started peeking out from behind blinds and doors. A few came out with their phones, already recording. For them, this was entertainment. For me, it was a nightmare. Out stepped Sergeant Harland. If ever there was a man who enjoyed making snap judgments, it was him. His jaw was already set, his eyes narrow, like he'd already decided how this story would end before hearing it. Beside him was Officer Dale, younger, fresh on the beat, still wearing that stiff, too clean look of someone new. "Sir," Harland said flatly, hand near his holster, hands where I can see them. "Step away from the vehicle." I complied. Slowly. Palms up, voice calm. "This is my RV," I said. "Please look at the side door. Those pry marks weren't there this morning." But Harland barely looked. He wasn't interested in evidence. He was interested in control. And Karen knew it. She stood tall, chin high, confidence pouring out of her. Behind me, a familiar voice cut through. My neighbor Lee leaned over his fence, holding a stack of papers. Lee was an older man, retired, practical. He was the kind of neighbor you could count on to water your plants when you were out of town. And right now, he was the only one speaking sense. "Marcus lives here," he shouted. "That's his RV. He's got the permits. Check his mail, check the records, he owns that vehicle." But Harland dismissed him with a quick nod, like he was background noise in Karen's stage play. That's when I shifted gears. Calmly, I reached into the RV's cup holder and pulled out a small device. A relay box. Sleek, dangerous, the kind of thing car thieves use to trick vehicles into thinking the fob is nearby. "This," I said, holding it carefully for the officers to see, "is how they spoof the signal." Karen's smile twitched, but she didn't back down. "And this," I gestured to the ignition where a jiggler key was still jammed, "is how they forced it. Look closely. It's worn, bent from use." Officer Dale's eyes flickered. For the first time, doubt crept across his face. He glanced at me, then back at Karen. But Harland still wasn't convinced. That's when I turned my attention to Tim. He stood at the curb, shifting uncomfortably, guilt written all over him. "Tim," I said gently. "Are you okay?" His eyes snapped up to mine. He looked young, fragile. Sir, I didn't, he stopped, swallowing hard. I'm not here to make it worse, I assured him. Just tell the truth. You're safe. And with that, he broke. His voice cracked like thin glass under pressure. Mom wanted to make a point, he whispered. She said if she took the RV, she'd prove you didn't care about the neighborhood. She said she had paperwork. She told me it'd teach you a lesson. The words tumbled out, quick and panicked. Karen exploded. He's lying. He's threatening my son. He's armed. Her voice shrieked through the air like a siren itself. And that was when I dropped the calmest, coldest line of the night. I'm FBI. The world seemed to stop. Even the birds went silent. Neighbors gasped. Phones zoomed in. Even Harlan's jaw twitched. I reached down, slowly, deliberately, and pulled my badge from my belt. The metal caught the fading sunlight. Special Agent Marcus Reed, I said firmly. This is my RV. Those are pry marks. That's a relay box. The immobilizer already pinged my team 2 hours ago. Everything shifted. Harlan froze, halfway between suspicion and uncertainty. Dale straightened. Karen's face went pale, then red, then twisted with rage. Bob avoided everyone's gaze, staring at his shoes like maybe the ground would open up and swallow him whole. Tim let out a breath he'd been holding, relief washing across his face. But the night wasn't over. Not even close. Because just when things seemed to calm, the rumble of a heavy engine filled the street. A tow truck turned the corner, HOA logo painted on its side. The driver stepped out, clipboard in hand, paperwork that looked official enough to fool anyone. Karen clapped once, sharp. Finally. Community enforcement, she declared, triumph dripping from every word. But I wasn't fooled. That's not legal, I said, stepping between the Titan and the tow truck. An HOA letter doesn't authorize towing from a private driveway. Only the owner or a court can approve this. That paperwork isn't valid. The driver hesitated, glancing from me to Karen to the officers. Engines idled. Neighbors leaned in closer, cameras recording every second. But then, with a tight jaw, the driver latched the hook onto my Titan anyway. Karen's smirk widened. For her, this was victory. But for me? This was strategy. Because the Titan wasn't just my RV, it was bait. Rigged with trackers, decoy systems, and an immobilizer designed to log tampering. If they wanted to take it, fine. We'd follow. And that's exactly what happened. The tow truck rolled through the neighborhood, Karen beaming like she'd just won the neighborhood lottery. My team shadowed quietly, trackers pinging every turn. We followed it through winding back streets until it led us to an old industrial scrapyard on the city's south side. The place reeked of gasoline, rust, and things left behind. Broken rigs sat stripped, windows shattered, wires dangling like veins. It was the kind of place where people brought items they didn't plan on seeing again. Inside, the truth unfolded. Bins of stolen electronics. Dozens of copied key fobs. Piles of car parts stripped from vehicles. And at the center of it all, a box of HOA memos, Karen's handwriting scrawled across them. But the smoking gun? A burner phone with a voicemail message. Karen's voice, clear as day, make sure the RV goes south. We'll handle the fines later. It wasn't just petty HOA politics anymore. This was a theft ring. Organized. Calculated. And Karen was tied to it. The troopers moved in, swift and silent. Suspects cuffed. Evidence bagged. One man tried to run, duffel bag spilling stolen fobs across the oil-stained ground. He was caught within seconds. Another man pulled out his phone, but by then we already had warrants lined up. The chain of evidence was airtight. Back in the neighborhood, word spread like wildfire. The woman who had spent years lording over everyone with fines and rules was now at the center of a federal investigation. Karen tried to fight it. Tried to call lawyers. Tried to spin the story. But when you're caught with timestamps, GPS logs, eyewitnesses, and your own recorded voice ordering the theft, there's no shouting your way out. Her presidency crumbled. Her reputation shattered. And soon enough, her freedom followed. As for me, I brought the Titan back home, safe. Lee clapped me on the shoulder, neighbors whispered their relief, and for the first time in a long time, the street felt quiet. But I'll never forget that night. Because it proved something most people don't realize. Sometimes, HOA disputes aren't about weeds, or mailboxes, or trash bins. Sometimes, they're about power. And when someone believes power makes them untouchable, they'll go to extremes you wouldn't believe. Karen believed she could bend reality with her voice. She believed loudness was the same as truth. But the night proved otherwise. Because when the law shows up with evidence, receipts, and cold hard facts, even the loudest HOA Karen is forced into silence.